I remember very well, we were invited the first day in Seattle. There's the process where we go into a meeting, you sit down, you read a 6-pager. Okay. No one says hi. You just sit and you read. We all look at each other and it's like, we don't understand anything. It's like, what is that? At Souq, we were only focused on our customers. So as I said before, we were always focused on solving our customer problems. And guess what? At Souq, we have the startup mentality and we solve problems by building them. And we are always learning and improving and improving.
Welcome to the Sandpit Startups podcast, where we journey into the minds of the brightest and the best entrepreneurs the region has to offer. We're here to connect the entrepreneurs in the studio with the entrepreneurs sitting and listening at home. We sincerely hope the next half an hour or so motivates, educates, or inspires you. And if it does, you know where the follow button is.
Today, we are excited to have Mary Ghobrial with us, who has played key roles in Souq.com and Anghami. With Souq.com, she was part of the leadership team, contributing to the growth of one of the largest e-commerce platforms in the region, and also played a pivotal role in the company's success to get the acquisition by Amazon. And also after Souq.com, she went into being the CCO of Anghami also.
One of the C's, correct.
One of the C's, correct. It gets very interesting from there. It also led to being listed on NASDAQ. So 2 success stories and even more interesting stories to hear from Mary today. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Sam, Abhishek, thank you for having me. I'm humbled and very, very happy to be here. Super excited.
Likewise.
The pleasure's ours.
Thank you.
So starting out where you guys started, being from the founding leadership team, what were those early days like, particularly if you knew or you felt the pressure of perhaps Amazon maybe entering this market? Did you feel that pressure, and how was managing that pressure and delivering some sort of scalability in those early days?
I think the early days of Souq were probably the best days of my entire career. And that's like 25 years of working, and literally these years were the best. We were in a small office in Media City, 6 people, and no one had particularly a title or a role, but we were all genuinely focused on one only problem, which is solving the customer problem of how can we get more selection at a better price. So when you say were you focused on Amazon entering the market, I have to admit we really didn't think of that at all. We were just focused on building our own Amazon of the Middle East, and literally super focused on 4 key problems, and these were the customer problems in the Middle East. Is like, how can I get selection, how can I get it at a better price, how can I get it quickly? And then the other problem, which we were also focused on, is like, how do we actually convince the customers to buy online? Because people were not wanting to buy online. So if you think about it, it was 2 really big problems. One is, how do you convince the brands and the retailers to sell online? And how do you convince the customer, hey, you know what? It's okay. It's safe to buy online. And hence, literally what we were doing was breaking up every problem. And because we were building the entire ecosystem, so we built solutions for each of those problems. So for example, on selection, we would go knock on every retailer door and convince them that actually putting your selection online is not going to cannibalize from your store.
Right.
Convincing every brand from Apple all the way to, the Adidas of the world, that working with the distributor and working with your franchisee, because the ecosystem in our region was primarily licensees and franchisees, that will not disrupt your full ecosystem, but will actually only increase it and implement it. And then all the problems of, okay, how can we deliver? Let's build a delivery company. How do we do payment? Everyone wanted to pay cash on delivery only. How do we convince them to pay credit card? Oh, let's build a payment company, which was Payforth at the time. How do we convince customers to buy online? Hey, let's create a big event, which was White Friday. So literally everything we've done was a solution to a problem that we faced.
That's crazy. Every time you ran into a problem, you built a company to solve that problem.
Correct.
What kind of mindset does it take to do it that way and not just like figure it out some other way by maybe outsourcing?
I mean, we were a bunch of engineers, except me, but Ronaldo Mshahwar is an amazing engineer. And hence we had also an amazing team of technology people who were based in Jordan. So everyone was from the region. We didn't import any talent or any technology, and we built it. And I have to say that team is actually not only built Souq.com, but later on when we talk about Amazon, this team sitting in Jordan of Arabic engineers continue to build to solve problems for Amazon worldwide, whether it be the language, from right to left and left to right, all the way to other technologies that it's solving for now that I can't necessarily talk about.
So it's not just Amazon MENA, it's now actually Amazon.
It's actually Amazon Global. Absolutely. We solved problems for Amazon globally.
That's amazing.
Yes.
It's very interesting because I've spent a good 3 decades here, and the names that always stick as startups over here were Souq, Dubizzle, and they have kind of a legacy of their own. But a question perhaps would be is, first level, it's because I have seen this in India with Flipkart. They also copied the Amazon model, but they had some relevance that Vinny Bansal, the founder himself, was with Amazon previously. So probably he had the know-how, or probably a small amount of skill set. How was the challenges in starting and probably elaborating the Souq.com expansion in this region? And also would be interesting to know regarding if you were aware of Amazon perhaps being in the vicinity, trying to enter the market.
So first of all, it's funny you mentioned names like Binny and Amazon at the time. We worked very closely. So you probably know the history of Souq. So it was originally funded by Samih Toukan and Hussam Khouri, 2 amazing Jordanian entrepreneurs. And I think these guys are literally the standard of entrepreneurship from our region. And Samih and Hussam originally built Yahoo.com. Because they had Maktub, so this was the first Arabic internet in the world that sold it to Yahoo. And then they said, Yahoo said, we don't want this small part of e-commerce, which is Souq.com, and that's how Souq started. And our key investor is Tiger Global. So Tiger also had investments in companies like Trendyol in Turkey, like Flipkart in India. So we learned a lot from all the other e-commerce that could have been a little bit ahead of us in the Middle East, and hence we brought these standards of excellence and learning. As a matter of fact, Kalyan, who is currently the CEO of Flipkart, was on our board of directors. And Kalyan, again, an amazing person, and I'm lucky to have worked with him, would sit on the table and say, hey guys, this is what's happening in India today. This is key success stories. And literally very deep dive to the extent, for example, just to give you an example, exclusive mobiles worked for Flipkart. So to get in a mobile and sell it exclusively
through that channel
is something that was important. So we started re-implementing that, and we brought into the region so many value mobile phones from China, from India, from around the world, and that was the beginning of a particular category on Souq.com. And then we learned from Trendyol, how do we sell fashion? Not sure if we were ever successful in that one. That's a difficult one overall, but that's the kind of learning. So we definitely were, I think, very, very lucky to have someone like Tiger to bring not only the cash, but more importantly, the expertise from different similar markets and similar ecosystems to us. So, I mean, at the beginning when we were building Souq.com, the biggest, of course, customer problem was how do we get selection online? And you probably know the ecosystem in the Middle East was all tied up with big retailers and big groups. And they were very afraid because they are retailers. They had their stores in the malls. And hence, we literally had to go to every single one of these big groups and convince them that also putting your selection online is only going to increase your sales, because it's what the customer wants at the end of the day. And the customer was moving to buying online. And if you don't put that your iPhone online or your Adidas online,
There's an opportunity
the
cost.
customer is going to buy it from somewhere else. And we had to show data of how the customers were literally buying on Amazon Global Store that same selection. And hence, we want to make sure that the customer is getting it from your own selection, from the local selection. So while Souq started initially as actually a marketplace, we faced two key challenges. We faced how do we build category by category. So we had to prioritize categories that were easier to go online. So customers are already familiar of buying it online, like electronics was easier to buy versus, beauty or consumables were more difficult to buy online.
Right.
So we had a really strong prioritization strategy of these categories. And then we literally took one by one and we switched back to retail. So we built what we called an anchor brand. So for example, if we want to build, mobile phones, mobile devices, we had anchor brands, iPhone, Samsung, Huawei, Honor, and then we started to complement these with exclusive brands. Let's bring Infinix from, from wherever. So that was a very important where we actually had to switch to investing and buying and taking some risks in a category by category. Let's buy a little bit more of, L'Oreal or Lancôme. Let's buy some from Procter & Gamble to establish the grocery online, and so forth. So there was a lot of retail building category by category. But once you establish the anchor brand, we would then be able to go to all of the sellers of these categories to bring the rest of the long tail of the selection. But then we had to solve another problem for the sellers. Sellers are small businesses, right, in UAE or in Saudi. And hence at the time, it's like, how do I take a picture? How do I write a description of the content? How do I deliver my items to your warehouse? And so forth. So hence, we moved from retail to, again, marketplace, which opening it up to encourage sellers to come, but solving the problems of the sellers from the abilities to sell online. And that's really building the entire ecosystem of Souq here. So what we were focused on is solving these two problems. How do we establish category by category? And then how do we solve the seller's problem to come and sell online? So we were building that entire ecosystem. And that's why when Amazon came and looked at the Middle East and looked at, okay, this is really a fast growing, because they could see the glance views from the Middle East on Amazon Global Store. So there's definitely a high demand. But then Amazon is Amazon. They did the math. It's like, do I actually go ahead and rebuild that entire ecosystem? Or there is this company, Souq.com, that has done a really good job of understanding the customer, solving their problems, building the solutions for these problems. And that's why Amazon acquired us. By the way, we're the only company of e-commerce that Amazon fully acquires 100% and migrates and integrates into an Amazon. So that's the uniqueness that we've built in the region.
There you go. That perfectly segues us into the next bit.
Yep.
So Mary, I'd like to talk now about the acquisition itself. You did mention that you started to get the attention of Amazon before the acquisition. Was that a strategic sort of play, or was it just that's how things go? You start taking market share and then bigger players come knocking type of thing?
So Sam, we were on a roadshow. We were raising capital. We know that we had enough solutions for our customers at that time, and we really needed the cash. So we were on, we hired investment bankers, and we were on the roadshow. So my job switched from, just purely getting selection and all of that to also pitching to investors like any other startup. And that's our story, and that's why we need the funds, and that's what we're going to do with the funds. Literally a startup pitch, and I think that's how we got Amazon as well attention when they saw that we needed some help, not only capital but also with the power of technology of Amazon, it will enable us to scale faster. So at the time we had many options of investors. We chose Amazon because of the strategic power and how they would help to scale e-commerce
sure,
in the
yes.
Middle East much faster than anyone else. And that was really the key, turning point of why Amazon was the choice at that time.
So after the incredible acquisition, apparently it's not always smooth sailing, as I've got to know offline. Would love to know what were the challenges after the acquisition once you have some big company which is part of the team right now, and they also have their know-how which they can translate and probably provide you with. But did things get easier or did things get more difficult?
I'll talk about that. So I think, first of all, I think what was most important is that our values at Souq were exactly the same as Amazon values.
Okay.
And that helped a lot. And at Souq, we were only focused on our customers. So as I said before, we were always focused on solving our customer problems. And guess what? Amazon is just customer obsessed. At Souq, we have the startup mentality and we solve problems by building them. And at Amazon, it's always day one. And it's always,
All right.
you know what, we don't know, let's start, and we are always learning and improving and improving. And hence that fundamental commonalities between the two companies was very important, and that helped a lot the acquisition, migration, and integration phase. Having said that, I mean, of course, it was, we called it the bear hug. So it's a hug. Amazon really loved us. We were their baby, but they were a bear, and hugging us was not necessarily always, easy.
Yes.
So yes, we did, of course, we internally as an organization, while super excited as a leadership team, but there was a lot of internal processes that we had to learn from Amazon. And I remember very well me sitting with Ronaldo, who is he was our CEO, and Asif, our CFO, and we were invited the first day in Seattle to go, and it was like, they were welcoming us. And at Amazon, you probably know, there's the document, process where we sit down, we go into a meeting, you sit down, you read a 6-pager.
Okay.
No one says hi. You just sit and you read. And then after, 20 minutes or half an hour, we start the discussions. And we go there, and it was, the probably the most difficult OP1, which is like the budget planning at Amazon. And we sit and we read, and it was like, okay, and these are like Asif and Ronnie. Put me aside, but Asif and Ronnie were like most intelligent people I ever worked with, and we all look at each other and it's like, we don't understand anything. It's like, what is that? So it did take time. It did take time to understand the Amazon processes, to learn how to write a document, to learn to be part of a huge, tech giant. We were used to, hey, we have this problem. Okay, 3 engineers, Jordan, get it done. I want it done in 2 weeks. 2, you have to write a document, wait for your, roadmap. Is Mina on the roadmap even? All right. And if we are on the roadmap, it's not 3 engineers. It's actually going to cost us 300 SDE weeks. It's an X large project and so forth. So that shift was quite a difficult shift for the organization internally to adapt to. But we did it, and we did it, very well. We also had a lot of our sellers who are also our customers in that. So while we migrated the customers, because then you were moving from a Souq app and Souq
Interface
experience to an Amazon one. But I think the biggest challenge is also for our sellers who are selling on Souq, because we held their hands very closely. We helped them to create the content. The Souq Seller Central was a much easier one. Arabized, the fulfillment was in Arabic. Like we literally had to go through every single step again and migrate that into an Amazon world and educate our sellers to the Amazon worlds, which were not necessarily very easy. And I think we faced a lot of challenges. But then on the bright side, once we were fully integrated, the customer wins at the end of the day, because suddenly you not only have, the selection here, it is a much better experience, the Amazon personalization, the search, the ML models gives the customers a way better experience. But then also you open cross-border which is the last actually project I worked on Amazon, which is bringing amazing global sellers and selection from China, from India, from the US, from everywhere into the Middle East. So the customer can actually in sitting in Dubai can have access to literally any selection on Amazon that they want, and with Prime they can even get it free shipping, and that's again the beauty of an Amazon world.
As the saying goes, lightning doesn't strike the same place twice, but it did for you because you went from one great venture to another. So it would be really interesting to know the transition from Souq.com, and then you were with Anghami as the chief operating officer. We've had Waleed Mansoor also on the podcast talk about Anghami and the heights it reached with the listing. How has probably the learnings from Souq.com and the new experiences in Anghami kind of intertwined with each other?
Yeah, so I think two key learnings I took from Souq and Amazon that were, that helped a lot at Anghami. Number one is this mix of a startup and the big processes of a company that is going public, right? Because Anghami was a startup.
Yes.
Internally, how they operated, all of these, and how do you then have to put really strong processes and measuring and KPIs because it's going to go IPO.
Yes.
So that's really what I helped with. And I think it was super important to ensure that Anghami was very different before we IPO. So the two key things was and I remember when we were building Souq categories, and mobile phones was of course the most important category. I remember the trick that really got us to scale very quickly was when we got exclusive mobile phones, from China. And I was like, okay, hold on a minute. What is it in the music world? Let's get someone exclusive. Can we get, can we get a singer who's exclusive for Anghami? So really that is the big differentiation. And I got Amr Diab. Amr Diab is the number one artist in our Arabic world. It's like, okay, let's get Amr Diab exclusive. And everyone was like, you're crazy. And I was like, well, let's try. And we got Amr Diab. So Amr Diab was actually exclusive on Anghami. And that news was super important because literally the scale of your users on Anghami was just incredible because every single listener, and the way we did it was Amr Diab was not on any other platform. Amr Diab was off YouTube. You could not listen to an Amr Diab song on YouTube or anywhere. And I think that was a key milestone, and that was a learning from the startup world of Souq.com. But then in order for you to go IPO, you really have to have all the numbers proper, all the measurements and all of this. So I took the processes of Amazon, how do you do a WBR and MBR, all of this, and we re-implemented it at Anghami, which really helped to set up a solid company that is ready to talk to the world with numbers and to the investors with numbers.
So being wrapped up in the e-com world from such an early stage in your career, but also just generally e-com, particularly in the region, where do you see it going from now on forward?
I think I'm kind of super lucky because I started in entertainment and I did e-commerce, and now you can see that the future of e-commerce is a mix of these two.
Okay.
The Gen Z is actually consuming a lot of social media.
Yeah.
The customer, that young customer, is also buying on her TikTok, on the Instagram and whatever.
Yeah.
And if you see how, social media, social commerce, live commerce, I want to say.
Okay.
So there's something called now e-commerce 3.0.
Okay.
And that's literally live commerce. And live commerce is kind of a mix between e-commerce as we know it.
Yeah.
Quick commerce, so all the quick apps, like today I buy all my groceries on a quick commerce app. I actually not on e-commerce, so it's a little bit beyond. And then social media where you buy, you see this makeup, okay, you go to another platform to buy it.
Yeah.
And I think the future is the merge of all of these three into something new.
Yeah.
And I call it e-commerce 3.0. And that's where everywhere is heading. So there was the latest research that says that live commerce is going to be around 170 billion dollars. China is definitely leading in this one.
Okay.
But I believe that the Middle East, because of, you can see the way consumption of social media is happening, the impact still of influencers and celebrities on our decision making, the way we discover brands and engage with brands is happening a lot on social media still. But also the urgency of getting things, like we're spoiled as a customer in our region, right?
Yes.
And you see a lot of e-commerce from luxury all the way to groceries that deliver in 15 minutes now. And that type of convenience is unprecedented elsewhere in the world. So I think somewhere the merge of these three is going to be what's going to happen in the Middle East. So wait for e-commerce 3.0.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Mary, and thank you on behalf of the whole region for spearheading this nature of us becoming spoilt, I suppose, by giving us that fantastic selection and also moving towards quick commerce, convenience, and hopefully soon we'll see the introduction of e-commerce 3.0. I'm excited to see what that
Absolutely, and thank you for having me, and thank you for having a voice of an Arabic woman on your show.
Absolutely.
Absolute
It's our pleasure.
It has been our pleasure for sure.
Thank you.